we're going to talk about a comment that I got on one of my YouTube videos last week. And I think it's like both terrible and great. So we've got a trigger warning for a slur here, but I promise it's good. So we got this comment from Kenneth. So shout out to Kenneth if you're watching. I legit love this comment, by the way, and I think it's a good video. I am not calling you out. We're talking about this. So Kenneth says, I'm sure this is getting me demonetized, but Kenneth says, trannies have the right to join female sports and female restrooms. If Trump do not like it, Trump can get the hell out of America. And I responded saying, I'd rather 100 guys like this than a single polite centrist who just has concerns about me using the toilet. And I totally stand by that. And it seems to have done pretty well. Like most people totally agreeing with this. Kenneth, if you are watching, just so you know, trannies is like an offensive term for trans people. And maybe you've heard trans people saying it to each other, but it's not something you should really call someone in public. But now you know. And if you come up, you've basically come up to me and said this to me, and I've read this as you, someone who has their heart in the right place and cares and like genuinely supports people like me, and that's like great, like that's amazing. And also, it says to me that maybe you haven't spent that much time talking to trans people directly, which is fine because most people haven't. And I think there can be so much like emphasis on policing language. I feel like that's a very like performative liberal like thing to do. It's like the classic, this is like the inverse of the classic situation you have where someone like J.K. Rowling, obviously and undeniably a transphobic extremist, but she has never said the word tranny. So they're like, oh, where has she ever been transphobic? She hasn't said a slur for trans people ever. It's like, well, yeah, but just because she hasn't said a slur, that doesn't mean everything she's saying isn't just transphobic hatred. It's like people completely being unable to see the content of what is written or see the motivation or the intention or get any kind of vibe from people at all and just going purely on whether the words are good words or bad words. Yeah, the word tranny is generally a bad word because most of the time when people say it, they're saying it to try and hurt you or as a build-up to actually physically hurt you. But it doesn't mean it always is. Like, sometimes trans people call this to each other as a joke. Like, in some places in time, this wasn't really considered a slur. So, like, the point here is the intention. Like, Kenneth obviously has his heart in the right place and seems like a nice person. And it's right, like, it's not very American for you to try and ruin trans people's lives because trans people have been living in America for years. Maybe go and live in some, like, backwards hellhole where they don't have rights at all, rather than trying to ruin everyone else's life around you. So I guess if you're a cis person and you're a bit confused about what's going on, just think, like, who would be better for you? Would you rather someone who was rude to you, but who, like, donated to support your human rights? Or would you rather someone who was polite to you, who campaigned to, like, take away your freedom? Like, what's more important to you, politeness or, like, actual good intentions? Yeah, I understand the need for politeness to some degree, because sometimes you can use a lack of politeness as, like, to show your bad intentions. But in general, it's just, like, a complete distraction from, like, what's going on. Especially hate it when, you know, politeness is used to control a conversation where someone will say something really disgusting about trans people, but politely in the eyes of, like, the general cis public. And then if you say fuck off to them because they've said something absolutely disgusting about trans people, then suddenly you're the one being rude because you said a naughty word, whereas they never said a naughty word. They just simply said that all trans people were sex-obsessed weirdos or something. It's like, well, just because they didn't use an impolite word doesn't mean that they were being anything but confrontational, aggressive, dehumanizing, humiliating. So yeah, shout out to Kenneth. I think most trans people would agree that they would rather be like in a space with Kenneth than they would with most of the people who like write for the Times or the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Daily Mail or something, who might be polite to your face but are campaigning to remove your human rights behind your back. Sometimes I see people talking about liberal elites and using alienating language, and I do understand that to a degree. Like sometimes I click on these like leftist theory YouTube philosophy or politics videos, and they say so many long words so quickly that it takes you sometimes have to pause it to like digest a sentence to understand what they're saying. And that's fine if that's their target audience, is people who already know all the stuff. But it can be a bit alienating, and I think that trans people have to be careful not to do that. Not because I'm saying you're morally wrong if you use academic language or anything ridiculous like that, just because we want to win people over. And if someone says the wrong thing, the first thing you should do is like encourage them. Yes, thank you, amazing, thanks for being on side. And then if you feel it's appropriate, you can get it in, be like, also, just so you know, this word usually means this and not this sort of thing. Just because it's good to have people on side. And though I do think on the other hand, you do need the right language. Like if someone says like, I support you even if you're not a real woman or something, you're like, thank you, but just so you know, that's really insulting. And actually kind of plays into like anti-trans rhetoric, and it's quite important that we change away from saying these words. So like there's a difference between coming out with the term like cis heteronormative and expecting a random person on the street to know what that means. But I think that's like one thing is like, okay, we can't necessarily use this word in a conversation where the audience doesn't know what it means. But that's like different to confronting bad use of language and stuff.